Hey everyone, I wanted to talk to you today about some common coaching errors that I see. Now I'm going to be giving you what I'm thinking kind of in no particular order. So just see if any of these apply to you in your coaching practice, and if they do, then stop making mistakes. First thing that I wanted to talk to you about is inappropriate training load. This one comes up all the time, and it's a mistake that we all make, but it's the correction of the mistake that matters the most. So this could be either too much training load or too little. It really comes in both flavors. And it's not just the quantity, it's the shifting of the training load as well. You could have too much training load in a volume period and then too little training load in an intensity period, or the shift in intensity could be too much as you go from one block to the next. Now, some ways for you to be alert that this is a problem. Obviously, if the athlete is having trouble recovering, then it's possible that you've got too much training load. And it should be a conversation between you and the athlete to explore that. If you've got too little training load, lots of times athletes will kind of know this as well. They'll feel like, hey, I'm maybe not doing enough work, and also that would be accompanied by a lack of progress. If they feel like they're not doing a whole lot of work, they're not feeling, beat up, but they're getting stronger, that's not a bad thing. It's the lack of progress that turns this one into a problem. So if you find yourself in that boat, then you probably need a bit more training load. And then the inappropriate shifts as you go from one block to the next. Most often, the way I see this manifest in powerlifting is intensity that rises too quickly. You go from doing a volume block that contains lots of accessory work and lots of higher rep work to all of a sudden you're throwing in heavy singles again. Abrupt shifts in training intensity like that can sometimes be an issue. So you'll need to at least build in some transitional period. It's not rocket science. It doesn't need to be anything that's super complicated, but the further you take any of these ideas, the more attention to detail is going to matter. And speaking of attention to detail, another problem that I see in coaching practices is a lack of individualization. Obviously, that's a thing that I'm very big on, and we put a lot of effort into individualizing training for our athletes. And I think more coaches could build up more process around how to individualize training for their athletes. We use a block review process and kind of several layers to the block review process that we use so that we can extract information from the athlete's training log. We can identify exercises, we can identify intensities that are more associated with periods of good progress, and hopefully build training programs, exert some control over that, and bring blocks that are more fruitful to the athlete. That doesn't have to be the same process that you use in your own training, but you do need to pay attention to the athlete, identify what problems that they're facing, what roadblocks are coming up that are preventing them from progressing, get those roadblocks out of the way so that the athlete can do athlete things and show improvement. Another problem that I often see with coaches and really athletes too is just myopia. Just this tendency to be a bit too short-sighted with how they proceed in training. So a classic example of this, and you hear it all the time, this is my last year as a junior. So insert whatever crazy idea we have. I've seen lifters take risks that they shouldn't take. I've seen lifters put themselves in positions that they would probably rather not be in because they're pushing too hard. This is my last year as a junior. Another example of this might be, nationals is only 12 weeks away. So what do people do? They start trying to force progress. They start taking jumps in training that they shouldn't take. They make bad training decisions, and now they're a bit behind. Their progress is not what they expected it to be. So they push it even harder. They take even more risk in training, and things kind of go off the rails. It becomes this downward spiral. All of those are problems because we fail to see the bigger picture. We get so focused on the short term that we're no longer keeping the long term in mind and thinking what's really best for me in the big picture of things is to make good decisions in this training session that build on each other. And even if I'm off the pace slightly for this next competition, that puts me in a better position long term so that I can succeed in the bigger picture. The whole idea, that's the more important objective. The reason this is a problem for coaches is because, honestly, coaches allow this to happen. It makes sense that an athlete would be focused on the most important event that's right in front of their face. It's the coach's job to provide some perspective. It's the coach's job, and you hear this all the time among coaches that are paying attention. You hear that they have to rein their athletes in, and a lot of times it has to do with this exact thing. The athlete's getting focused on the competition that's approaching, and by focused, the definition of being focused on this means that you're no longer paying attention to the things outside of that view. Well, it's the coach's job to keep the bigger picture in mind. The athlete can focus on the short term, that's fine, but the coach reining them in is a process of making sure that the decisions being made are still in alignment with the long-term vision. The last coaching error that I want to talk to you guys about today, at least, is just long-term development. And you may be thinking, with emerging strategies being what it is, it might be surprising to hear me talk about long-term development being a coaching error, but it often is. And it's not so much about the physicality of long-term physiological development, it's development of the athlete as a person. That over time, we want our athletes to become more autonomous. We want them to develop sport mastery, obviously, and we want them to do that with a sense of purpose and connectedness to a larger community. So as you develop an athlete, as we continue to write training for them and to coach them through competitions, that they should kind of gain an appreciation for the entirety of the process. Now, it doesn't mean that they need to become coaches themselves, but it does mean that they need to understand the flow of competition. They need to understand what's expected of them in training, and that over time, your requirement for explaining the ins and outs of it may get to be less and less. And speaking from my own experience, in the times that I've done this well, coaching becomes more and more collaborative as the relationship progresses. We are able to work together. The athlete has more meaningful input for me, and we're just able to come up with a better experience for that athlete, and I think become a more effective coaching team over the long term. That wouldn't happen if they didn't become more autonomous, if they didn't become more masterful in the sport itself, and kind of become more sure-footed as they progress through their career. So that's what I've got for you guys for today. These are common coaching errors that I've got for now, at least. I'm sure there are others. I just wanted to thank you for watching, and if you like this video, make sure that you comment and subscribe and do all the things that we do with videos now, and we'll see you next time.